Hello. Okay, Brunswick Residents Network. We're a local network. You weren't here before. We're people who live and work in Brunswick. There's leaflets at the back. So we just had the Wildlife Canada meeting, and we're moving on to Randazzo, which is ultimately one of the most vibrant wards. Really important to believe today. I live in Wildlife, everybody, so that's my opinion. So I would like to introduce, we have Liz Irvin of the Greens, and we have Felix Dance from Socialist. And I would like to deliver some apologies. We have an apology to come from Thomas Nash of the Labour Party. We have no response from Kosta, Rologas from the Victorian Socialists. And we had an apology yesterday from Voula Allimonos from the independent group. So we have a bit of a five-star chat tonight. So I think a lot of people were here for the last one, but basically we're going to give both the candidates 3 minutes to introduce themselves. We've asked them to be brief and say whether they're members of a political party, whether they're part of a particular alliance, these questions, and whether they live in Brunswick. So we'll start off, then we'll do a couple of questions from the network. We'll go to the audience, and then we shall, at the very end, do a 2-minute wrap up. So I think we'll just jump straight in, why not? And well, we're going to go, I'll put this here because we're going to do an order of ballot. That's just usually how we do it, but it doesn't really matter with two people. So we'll start with Liz of the Greens, and I'll pass the mic to you. Great, thank you, Joe. Hi everyone, my name is Liz. I live in Brunswick East, and yes, as Joe mentioned, I'm the Greens endorsed candidate. I'm a transport planner for my job, and I absolutely love my work. For me, it's the perfect combination of technical aspects, like data analysis and design, combined with a really deeply human focus. It's about community engagement, it's about behaviour change, and about learning from people about what they want for their streets and places. So it might come as a bit of a surprise that I actually kind of stumbled into this career almost by accident. I really discovered transport planning as a field by working and volunteering for advocacy and campaigning organisations that were pushing for safer bike riding. And I'm actually really glad that I did come to this career this way. It's given me a huge appreciation for advocacy organisations and the work that they do in pushing forward and achieving better outcomes for the community. I'm running for council for 2 reasons. Firstly, even though I love my job, I do find that it's very frustrating to work on projects that end up on shelves gathering dust. You can spend time and time working on something and it will never get built, or in some cases gets built and then ripped out. Thankfully, I haven't personally worked on any Merri-bek projects that went through that. I've been watching from the sidelines. And what I've noticed in almost all cases, these decisions are purely political. I wanted to run for council to really take it to the next level, to be a champion for better streets and places at that political level. And secondly, I want to bring my experience to the role of councillor. I understand how projects work, how change happens, things like fundings and approvals. I really want to be a voice for the community. I want to amplify what you want to achieve for your streets and your neighbourhoods. People in Brunswick and across Merri-bek want so much more. I hear it on the doors. We want smoother sidewalk footpaths, better streets, safer bike riding on local streets and on main roads like Sydney Road and Lygon Street. We really want to see so much more, including things like parking controls. And it's it's not just about transport either. I think people really are ready to see a reimagining of our street space and what it's used for. This could include things like more trees for shade and also more space and for people to gather and socialise. I'm running for council because I'm ready and capable to help make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. My name is Felix Dance. I'm also working in transport actually. It's a bit strange coincidence, we talked about this before, but I'm a civil engineer. I work in construction. I do both construction supervision for major projects and also design management. I work on suburban railway at the moment, but I work on pretty much most of the major transport construction projects around Melbourne. I know a lot about roads, drainage, power. I know a lot about how roads fail and the best way to set up drainage so it doesn't flood streets. And I'm also a dad. I have a little baby girl who's 18 months on Monday. So it's been great to introduce her to the neighbourhood around here. I live in Brunswick, I must admit, but I live actually to the west of City Road and Parklands, slightly outside the electorate. But I'm an activist as well, so I've been in Socialist Alliance for a number of years now, and Sue Bolton is a councillor at Merri-bek, along with Monica Hart. But Sue's been running, she's been on council for 3 terms, she's running for the 4th term at Merri-bek up north. Sue's been an inspiration to me. She shows really what a councillor can do on the council. She's an activist, she talks to residents, finds out their concerns, organises people to get together to fight for their rights. The council is often bureaucratic and makes decisions that don't necessarily take into account the needs of the community. And that's where activism comes in. Because when people get together and they push back against something and cause a fuss, then that shifts the momentum towards that direction. Like an example is when the Falkland Pool was slated to be closed down. Sue organised all of the residents up north to make an absolute fuss about this, save the pool, and in fact now it's getting upgraded. I've also been a part of the Accessible Tram Stops campaign for Sydney Road. I've been a part of that campaign for several years now. I got on the news with my little daughter trying to get up the steps of a tram with the pram. And we haven't won that fight yet, but the energy that's come from the community to really fight for something that people need, that the bureaucrats, both at the state government level and at the council, if you can bring people together, we know that we can win this one. And there are plenty of other fights. Some of them that Sue's won with the community and some of them that we're still fighting. And I've been there every step of the way for the last several years, and I will take this fight to council and make sure that I represent the people of the Randazzo ward from the bottom up rather than trying to make decisions from the top down. I have a lot of experience. We can get the basics right, and I know how to run a spreadsheet. I know how to budget. I've spent all of my career budgeting, making sure that things are as efficient as they can possibly be. But I know that power really comes from the community. Thank you.
We'll jump to quick network questions. First one is, where in any of the 4 wards of Brunswick would you roll out a 30k trial? And can I just clarify something before? We had Adam speaking before, and he said something about Norfolk Trial. I just want to clarify that Norfolk Trial, there is a section of Norfolk Trial in Park. So I just wanted to make that clear.
One rollout of 30k that I've really sort of taken notice of in terms of the rollout worldwide is in New Zealand. They're focused on doing it in school zones, which I really think that schools are such a key part of all of our neighbourhoods. It's where so many journeys start and end, each day. And there's just there's so many reasons to do it. I mean, you need to make this environment safer, obviously, for children. Building our communities around the schools, there should be other amenities nearby as well. So I think that that's certainly a really great place to start, and there's an amazing case for it in terms of children's safety as well. I certainly think activity centres, as you also need to be improving the amenity along there. And really, nothing destroys a place like having high-speed traffic going through. So, I mean, as much as I would love to see it, rolled out, on most local roads, and I think that's a good place to start with drivers.
Thanks. Well, firstly, I think that Albert Street would be a terrific place to start. Albert Street's extremely narrow. If we could do something similar to Mill Street further south with the chicanes. Myself and my family, we own a car. It's a little Honda Jazz. We hardly ever drive it. We all get around on our bikes. We've got an electric cargo bike, and we constantly navigate around the streets around here, heading towards Barker Square, going down to the Merri Creek bike path. And any time that we come across like narrow streets like Albert Street, and the cars who are constantly trying to beat each other to get into the next parking bay so that they can squeeze past the next car, it's, like, I'm a confident cyclist, and I think that not everyone is comfortable to ride under those conditions, so bringing the speed down to 30 kilometres an hour would be terrific.
Okay, another quick narrow question. You have two main roads, you have Sydney Road and you have Lygon Street. So the question is, how would you fix Sydney Road and how would you improve Lygon Street?
Fix Sydney Road and improve Lygon Street, was that? Well, I was part of the Make Lygon Street Sparkle forum that Andrea hosted a few weeks ago. There was I was amazed at how much energy there was in that room. Dick was also there, sitting there. Oh, perfect. There was so many suggestions, so much great idea, and there was a survey that came out after that, and I think that the results of that survey said that a lot of people really wanted to see more greenery, more trees. I think that, especially with climate change, you can get a big heat island effect. All of the concrete absorbs heat during the day and then radiates it out. With more, as the temperatures rise, we'll need more and more refuges from these extreme heat fires. So absolutely more trees, more greenery, both along, obviously Lygon Street is the best place for this, more street lighting for pedestrians as well. Sydney Road, of course, I'm going to say the accessible train stops, I think that's number one priority. We need that to be installed before the Sky Rail comes in, and much better cycling, because you're taking your life in your hands sometimes, going along Sydney Road. So, that's...
Yeah, I fully agree. Certainly think Sydney Road, the next council term will be really crucial for having very strong council advocacy. With the upfield line out of action during construction, it'll be really important to have an accessible public transport route in the area. So yes, absolutely, it'll be a main priority to have accessible tram stops put in. And hopefully with that conversation comes a broader discussion around what we really want the street to be. Recently we worked on a project looking at something similar to Racecourse Road, which if anyone's sort of ridden along there, it's terrible. People still need to do it, but it's not at all an attractive street. But City of Melbourne has started a conversation about what people want for the street, whether it is protected bike lanes, accessible tram stops, greenery, really a combination of all of those things. And I would love to see something similar for Sydney Road. And also Lygon Street, it's another thriving sort of activity centre, so much is happening there, and yes, pedestrian safety is so important, especially at night. So lighting and accessible transports along there as well would be important in the long term too.
Okay, Lisa, you have your hand up.
Thank you. Lisa and I'm a Randazzo resident. I live in one of the streets between Stewart Street and Avenue Street that is incredibly narrow. It's two-way, single lane. There's so single fronted houses. There's so many cars parked that often two cars play chicken with each other and have to reverse up the street in order to yield. A council term ago, we were supposed to get parking restrictions in Brunswick. The councillors decided in the chamber that wasn't a good idea for Brunswick, therefore we didn't get parking restrictions, but we desperately need them. Are you committed to implementing parking permits in Brunswick?
This is absolutely something that comes up all the time that I hear. It's funny because in my parking comes up as just the sacred, you can't touch it, you can't do anything. But I think the community, when you actually speak to people and you speak to people broadly, it's the complete opposite. It's, people want control brought in, they want restrictions, and especially in cases like that where parking actually becomes a hazard in its own right, people can't actually move down the street. So yes, I do support bringing in control. So I've spoken to people who have attempted the council process of sort of getting a petition, speaking to neighbours. Even if you have, local resident support, it's still a very opaque process from the sounds of it. And I would like to see, where improvements can be made in that, just to make it a bit more transparent and easier.
Would you like to ask your question?
I didn't quite hear who the Victorian Socialist candidate is. He's not in attendance.
His name is Felix Dance, and he's sitting right here.
Victorian Socialist.
Oh, sorry, I really want to Victorian Socialist. Okay, we had no response from Kosta, Rologas.
That's him, yeah. No response.
No response.
We've
And
voted
there's
him several times.
a 6-week invitation.
We've voted him several times to invite him,
Okay,
and he hasn't replied.
thank you.
Yes, on parking restrictions. I must admit that I think that a lot of the businesses around Sydney Road and Lygon Street seem to have a view, and by no means at all, I get this impression that parking spots equal business. And I don't think that that's really the case. I think a lot of people, especially around here, really come into the area by other means of transport, public transport, bikes, walking, and people don't really rely on having to park directly outside the business in order to use it. So I do think that the council does need to take control of parking in a lot of these extra areas. I don't want to discuss this too much. Being on the left, of course, I heard that assumption, but I think that by allowing more access to these local areas, we can do a variety of these places, especially major thoroughfares like Sydney Road and Lygon Street. And in terms of residential, like deep into the residential areas, I think it would have to be done on a case-by-case basis, depending on what kind of street it is, how close it is to where people park, not to visit people or because they live there, but because they're just trying to take advantage of endless parking for somewhere that they're trying to shop.
Okay, I know what your question's in there, okay, no. Thank you. Yes, Xian again, and a resident of Brunswick. This is a question for all candidates. Have you got a how to vote card, and if so, who is your second preference? Thank you.
I don't have a how to vote card.
We do actually have a vote card. It's a bit touch and go if we ever roll them out to all the residences in the final weeks, still getting the main leaflet out. But we preference left to right. So I'm first, then Victorian Socialists, then Greens, Labour, and the Aussie Elite Independent candidate.
What else is that? Well, Angela, I have a hand up first, and then we'll go to the next.
Thank you, Andrea Bunting, for Merri-bek. You talked about the 30k rollout, which is fine. There are things called collector roads, which are not eligible for 40k unless they're in Randazzo. So we have collector roads in Randazzo that are 40k, which are Union Street and Victoria Street, I believe. Will you undertake in this term of council to ensure that this rollout of 40k is extended to collector roads? And I'll tell you, there was a lot of fights going on. Kenna's doing one in Kosta Street and Stockade, there's a few others, of people living on collector roads who want them to be 40k. I would like other people to have what Randazzo has, which is 40k on those collector roads, which are collector roads are in between the small residential streets and the major roads. They're sort of little feeder roads, not units.
And what's their current speed?
Their current speed is 50k, except in Randazzo. So we've got it good. Will you undertake to spread the 40k collector roads to the whole of Merribek?
Okay. Yes. Like, I'm a cyclist, I'm a walker, I barely use the car area, and I think that this is the way to go. I know that I have mobility that other people don't have, so public transport is important, but making the roads safer, making it more welcoming for people to get out and about, I'm all for. And I think that also people don't realise that slowing down traffic sometimes actually allows more throughput. So even though people might get momentarily inconvenienced by a slightly slower speed, because of the distances between vehicles, you can actually have more cars coming through. So, like, to do quite a lot of models to work this out, but you know, it's actually a lot more beneficial to have slower roads than people realise. So, absolutely.
And yes, totally, I would support looking into that. I think when you look at some of those streets that do fall under that category, there are sections of Hope Street just so narrow. To me, there's nothing that really differentiates it from any other narrow local street. So I think, yeah, 50 is far too high on streets like that, and I definitely support 40 or lower.
I've got a main question, but I do want to second the lady who was talking about parking controls, because I'm in Irvin Street, which is even narrower than Albert Street, and I watch cars being damaged every week. But so I'll leave that. But my other question is, what are you doing in regards to flood mitigation? Because there's a lot of issues with very low land around here, and we're going to have heavier rainfall events.
I mean, I feel like Felix is going to totally blow my head out of the water, but yes, absolutely. So, as we've seen with, I guess, the recent, inundation overlays and everything, it will become increasingly important, especially as our climate and flood risk is changing. One measure is obviously a small factor, but I do really like, introducing water-sensitive urban design into the street makeup. So things like rain gardens and swales, it's such an important thing on so many levels. Like, you're creating space for traffic calming or slowing down the traffic, but then you also have a really important, stormwater sort of treatment, diversion, interception method. And it's also really important to stop that water just going directly into places like the Merri Creek, preventing pollutants, litter, that sort of thing from getting into our really precious waterways.
Would you be happy for the budget to increase, that the
I think
council spends on those sort of things?
I don't know full detail, but I imagine it's something where it's just a matter of time that it'll have to. I think it's something that ultimately we won't have the choice, and we will need to be addressing it much more urgently. So yes, I would definitely support increasing the budget for that.
Thank you.
Thanks. And I've got to say, I thought the answer was perfect, and I had nothing to add.
Council, if you don't know, are rolling out flood overlay. I think it's a building overlay, not a planning overlay. And a lot of people are on that, but you will have a right soon when you receive your letters about it. I think so we're going to...
But an overlay doesn't actually
mitigate it
for
but what it does
existing houses.
You have to justify
Unless you can afford to
how
live in
you're
that.
going to cope when you're actually building something new. So it just puts the onus onto the property owner.
That's Bruce McGregor's my name from Brunswick, and that's going to be a real challenge in this new ward because it's very urban and completely built over. In that context, it's only going to get more dense, there's going to be more and more people, and so my question relates to what was the Merribek Nature Plan, which ran for 4 years and it expired last financial year. So I'm wondering about your views about refreshing and updating that plan, modernising it, and increasing resources for its implementation, because they seem to have been cut.
I think as everyone said in the previous session, that it has maybe been rolled into the urban forestry strategy, the urban forest to see if it has the same sort of objectives and everything. I do think it's really, green space and nature is so crucial as we do densify. I live in an apartment myself, and I know during COVID, Merri Creek was just an absolute sanctuary for me. It was so valuable in terms of my physical and mental health, so I absolutely support having more green space in our densifying areas. I do think, programs like the Park Close to Home is so valuable for creating, even just smaller pockets of parks and green space. It's really important to make it accessible to people, and I think including, aspects of nature, obviously improving biodiversity in those pockets is important as well. The one thing we've been talking about is having sort of an urban pollinated corridor, so they've done similar work in South Melbourne, just creating sort of with private plantings and gardens, helping people choose the right sort of plants, just to create a pollinated corridor that is really important.
So that will be different from the urban forest strategy, because the urban forest strategy for Merri-bek focuses on a lot of trees that aren't indigenous to the area, in fact often not indigenous to Victoria. So you mentioned something that's quite different to what Merri-bek has in their policy.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with, the details of that, but it's something I'm certainly willing to explore more.
Thanks. I do believe that access to parkland and green space is a basic human right. It's not one of the frequently listed ones in the UN, but it, as Liz says, it is absolutely essential for mental health. And as a councillor, I think it is important to fight for as much open space and green areas as possible. I was part of the campaign to save the trees at Gandalf Garden that Sue Bolton here was a major part of leading. So with the original Skyrella at Coburg, there was a laydown area, so not even part of the construction itself, but a laydown area that they were using in order to build the Skyrella. And the state's government decided that they were going to chop down these over 100-year-old native gum trees in that area. We fought very hard, and there was a 24-hour picket. Ultimately, it was lost. They came with bulldozers in the middle of the night and cops. But it just shows that in order to maintain native vegetation and open space, we really have to fight for it. There have been a lot of other examples, like Sue's also fought very hard for the Hoskin Reserve green space. That looks like it's a win there. And many other examples as well. So that's exactly the kind of activism that I want to bring to council. It's one of the main things that we need to fight back on against and a dismissive and over-bureaucratised attitude towards people's mental health in terms of green space and just being able to be outside. Thanks.
Okay, so a really successful campaign was the Bluestone campaign. Since the Commission has a question.
Thank you very much. Question to both of you, and it really is quite different to what I've heard earlier. I'm interested in what you see as the role of social and affordable housing policy in local government.
Thanks. I was wondering when this question would come up. So I'm from Socialist Alliance, and we're an activist father party, of course, and we believe that, similar to green space, housing is a basic human right. Everybody needs to have a home, and it's not negotiable. And the problem is at the moment is that a lot of, there used to be a huge public housing investment in Victoria. Everybody who came, anybody who needed a house could get one. Public housing is being sold off and demolished at just a criminal rate, really. And there's a new term that's coming, affordable housing. This is a weasel word, and it is so open to interpretation and exactly what the definition of affordable housing is. Often it just means 10% below an average, the average price of that house in the area, but there are multiple definitions. And I truly believe that we need to get back to public housing. The government must invest in housing itself, build housing, make sure that everybody has a place to live. Obviously, this is not exactly a council decision, It's not something that the council has real resources for at the moment, but it's something that we can fight for. And if there's any opportunity to create cheaper housing that ordinary people can actually afford to live in, it's a small percentage of their income rather than some rent that they have to work like multiple jobs, and if you're on minimum wage, you can't even afford, you know, that's not acceptable, and we have to fight for more.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a very important, you know, issue. Housing is definitely a human right. I agree that it's really been sad seeing just that lack of investment in public housing at the state government level. You know, council does have a limited role it can play in terms of delivering housing in its own right, but I think it's very important to have strong policies to support social and genuinely affordable housing. It will be something that will come up in the next term. Like council does have land in central Coburg that will be looking, you know, to have development, and I think it's really about, you know, looking at how we can ensure that housing there is, you know, available to anyone. So yeah, I'm very supportive of social housing.
So sorry, can I ask what sort of policy changes around vision of decent social and public accommodation? What kind of role do you think council might have that would make a difference to those people who are already living here, for whom we have responsibility?
Sort of in terms of providing them with housing, or
making that policy. So necessarily I'm just talking about a specific policy for local government. I'm sorry, I haven't heard anything that actually heard here, a lot of advocacy that was made at different government levels, but I'm not hearing from you about actually involvement in making a difference at local government and using the opportunities that you have under your mandate.
in terms of sort of delivering housing, you know, I mean, yeah, it is.
That's my question.
Yeah, it is a very complex and you know, fairly high risk environment in terms of being a developer. You know, I'm really interested to explore ways that council can do more, and it's certainly something that will come up in the next term. But yeah, I'm not a housing expert myself, but certainly willing to learn from others. And yeah, if there are any policy ideas that you have.
Yeah, I'll just say there is an obvious one, which is that you know, council can mandate a certain number of affordable housing units within a development, and this is a very sort of blunt tool, and it's not adequate, but it is something, and I'll definitely, as a council, use this as much as possible. There have also been a number of suggestions of putting a tax or some kind of levy on unused land, which will force developers to either sell up or start building on it. I'm very curious about that proposal. I do think that, you know, like, not to stray from the topic too much here, but I do think that there's a false dichotomy between the NIMBYs and the NIMBYs a little bit about where to generate housing supply, and I think land banking is actually a big aspect of what number of land could be used for development. I'm no friend of developers. In fact, our slogan is community need, not developer greed. But, you know, allowing development and then forcing them to create as much affordable housing under the terms that we dictate is something that we can do, but by no means adequate.
Did you have something specific in mind, like you might have to buy?
The policy perspective and also an understanding of the local opportunities that might exist in a number of different ways.
Yeah, well, the obvious one would be councils like on main roads, commercial on property, but houses are expensive, right? And you don't want to be a developer, so. Okay, so we'll move on. There were two questions, there were two next actually, but I'm really up there first because meetings on the list.
Nick Dolby, I think I lived in 5 houses in Randazzo work, but I now live in West Brunswick. My question is about disenfranchised voters. If on the council electoral roll, you can be a poll to vote in local council elections, Property owners, of course, get a vote, whether or not they're resident or not, whether or not they're Australian citizens or not. People who are not Australian citizens but who are permanent residents for a certain period of time in a local government area can vote in that local government area. The VEC has done nothing about this. Councils put out a poster recently, but mainly aimed at property owners, and the major parties don't seem to care because they're not sure who's going to vote for who. What would you do if elected to council?
Yeah, it's an interesting case. I wasn't aware that that was the case for all councils. I've seen the City of Melbourne do a lot of, I guess, promotion of people who aren't citizens who are eligible to vote. I do think, yeah, it's a massive issue. I think that in voter enfranchisement should be expanded. I know I've lived in the UK before, and as an Australian living there, I was able to vote, and I really welcome the opportunity to participate in a fairly key local environment where I was living and to feel like I was contributing to it. So I certainly would support any efforts. I think if council can improve sort of communications and advocacy to the VC to improve their communications about that, and to simplify the process as well. I found even for a permanent resident who owns property, you have to fill out a form and email it to someone. It's very clunky and not easy. So there are people who will have missed out because of that.
I think, thank you for bringing this up actually, because it is an anti-democratic aspect of the council elections and the way that voters are enfranchised. I think that if you're a resident, you should get a vote. And whether or not you own a business or you own property, that shouldn't matter. Are you a resident within the council? Yes, you get a vote. And that goes to permanent residents, not just citizens, I believe. And also, I do want to bring up the undemocratic changes to this election, which, I'm not sure if anybody was going to bring this question up, but I'm going to shoehorn it in here. I think this is absolutely abysmal. It's an appalling move by the Labor Party, changing to single-member wards. So a much more democratic system is proportional representation, and that is something that was partially adopted within the council system, having 3 large wards with multi-members. So this allows for a more diverse range of candidates to be elected. Having single-member wards is specifically designed for major parties to win tiny geographic areas. It is not democratic, and it was introduced solely for the benefit of the Labor Party. So as a councillor, I will absolutely campaign to reverse this and in fact bring it back to a much more proportional representative system. So that's my answer.
What about people under 18?
I absolutely support extending the vote well below the age rating, and I don't agree with it too.
Are you aware of the park that's being made opposite the Brunswick Town Hall? The park that's being constructed. I'm just wondering what finance has been spent on that to get that established. Are you aware of the...
You might have to ask one of the sitting councillors about this.
Okay.
It's what we were talking about before, the fund that we can build new parks with. That's what's funding that. I don't know the actual cost of it at the moment, but we could easily look that up.
Okay.
Any more questions?
When you're talking about greenery and trees, and I'm sorry, my name's Cass Tolley, and I won't stand up because he'll think we're going somewhere. This is hoochie. Street trees, I don't know if anyone else noticed, but a couple of months ago somebody came in and did some pruning, which was absolutely decimating every tree. Who runs this? It's hard to get any answer from council, but if you're going to plant trees that need to be chopped down like that, plant something else. I don't understand why they don't plant flowering gums all the way along, you know?
It's called pollarding, and it's an established agricultural practice in order to maintain growth and our sort of growing back. I know it looks horrific.
It looks hideous.
It's an established practice. Like it's not a, someone getting enough with a chainsaw. It's actually scientific.
Does the mayor want to comment on that?
Yeah, Lisa's right, it's appalling. Trust me, I lived near that area, and that morning when those trees were cut, I got so many text messages because people were horrified.
It's all over the country.
Yeah, exactly. But essentially, council trimmed it back as much as they could, like the low level maintenance. But it's a ficus tree, and if it's a complicated, you can't just plant anything there because of the little services running along the strip. If they didn't do this, it would not, and then the trees would eventually, I think, fall over and fail. So, yeah, and it's an interesting question whether maybe this only has to happen in frequent periods. Maybe council should look at doing every second tree, and so like at least you need some shade. But I think it's worth keeping.
But even the trees they plant, if you go through a lot of our country towns, who still have overhead wires that have flowering gums that are quite happy to be
cut. The trams have the what?
That you can cut them down, you can cut off. They don't have to just be left to. Yeah. They're quite happy to be short and bushy. Another one is the bins that just. I don't know. Does Brunswick Council or Moreland Council own any sort of a street sweeper or footpath cleaner or anything like that? Or did they sell them off? Did they sell them off so that we can afford our CEO, the fifth highest paid in Victoria? Yes, I have just one other thing to say. Anything that talks about development and housing, I don't know if any of you have tried to get anything through building and planning at Moreland Council, but it is absolutely abysmal. I've been here for 10 years. I've run a business. I have a resident. I have a place to live, and they are dreadful to deal with. They are. The nicest thing I can say about them is that they're obstructive, and you can plan and have all sorts of really good ideas. But if you're stumped at that level, I sent an email 3 years ago and I still haven't had a response. You can't contact.
Do you have a specific? Do you want to ask them?
I want to ask what they're going to do about those things.
Do you want to know if they will improve the planning application system? Okay. Will you improve that?
You can't get anywhere if you can't get through.
Yeah, I certainly think it's something I do hear people, frustrated with lack of response and difficulty in finding the right people to speak to. So, yeah, certainly there would be something that could be improved.
We're never going to get building done if we can't get past them.
I do think that this does come to, it's like something else. I grew up in my, opening little spiel, but I think that there are a lot of aspects about council and other levels of government as well, which are highly bureaucratised, and it's very easy for people to just sort of ignore the public and ignore what the process actually entails for people who have to deal with it from the resident side. And I think that's why having an activist on council can really help to bring these issues out. People can get together, we can fight for it, and it puts some pressure on. A lot of these people are, they're unelected. Obviously they're doing their job, but they have their own pressures that aren't about the community's need. And I don't know the specific issue you're talking about. I've never had to deal with it or anything like that. But I can see that if there's something that's been difficult to deal with, it's bureaucratic, it's stymied, something that's obvious and easy to do from the local level, we can get together and we can put pressure where it really matters to get either more resources or better systems, clean out anything that's just not needed and deal with backlogs. This is the sort of thing that if you do apply enough community pressure, you can actually get results. So I'm not sure that's in particular, but this is the kind of thing that I would like to say to council.
And when it comes to the waterways, rubbish that's going down those big drains, if the streets are dirty, it goes down the drains, our infrastructure's old. It's really it.
I wanted to go back to the question that was raised before about housing, and you mentioned NIMBYs and YIMBYs and so on. I think we're classed as NIMBYs, according to current discourse. The YIMBY movement is currently working with developers in Randazzo, particularly Nightingale, and pushing for a change to the Victorian planning scheme to remove anything about visual bulk and to remove setbacks. Does your party support that? A below 20 stories. So a 19-storey building can have no setbacks. Does your party support that?
I'm not too sure actually. I know this is something that has sort of recently come up in the media. I think we've been looking into that and seeing what the outcomes are. I certainly think, I guess where it has come up, I've sort of seen responses to their article, and I do think we kind of it is important to still have light, and I guess that sort of amenity that's kept even with taller buildings, but I have to look into that.
Yes. No, we do not support that. So, like our campaign slogan, community need not develop a green. This is a major part of why it's been supported for grassroots activists to run for council, because there is a move these days to remove the democratic process and residents' voices from planning decisions. We've seen it with the state government over the last several years that they're trying to consolidate all of the power in order to remove local communities from any ability to challenge developers, whatever they plan to do in order to make the biggest possible profit. And I think that we have to stand up against that. Because once we lose the ability to say no to some of these inappropriate developments, it's incredibly difficult to get it back. So we have to fight very hard to keep what we have. And in terms of the specific, I support mandatory height limits. We obviously need more housing, so it's not a simple case of like no to everything. That's not what we're about. We do need much higher density living, especially in areas as amenable as the inner north here. But that doesn't mean a blanket yes to any proposal that some shonky businessman comes in order to make the absolute maximum amount of profit from a development that they're probably losing, money on in terms of the building materials going up. They're stressed out. Their interests are not the community's interests. We have to fight for what makes our area livable.
Okay, so we're going to go 1, 2, 3, then Jay. Questions? Yeah.
Sorry, me? Yeah. Okay. Francis, I'm a resident. I can understand, you've given a very coherent explanation of your, political background and what that means in terms of your local candidacy. As a Greens candidate, you've explained something in terms of your work and your interests. What does being a Greens candidate actually mean in terms of your local candidacy and your local activism?
So, I don't know if you're familiar with the way that Greens sort of currently operate on council. We do have 3 current Greens councillors, and do you mean sort of my personal involvement with the party, or just how Greens sort of...
What relevance does being a Greens candidate have locally? I mean, is it simply a building block in terms of political career, or does it actually have some local relevance in terms of your candidacy here?
I think Greens on council have achieved so much, and I've been on council for decades now. I think it's really important to have, we do have the 4 pillars that we believe in terms of environmental sustainability, social justice, peace and non-violence, and grassroots activism. And that certainly applies to the council level as well, like maybe even more so because it's really the most grassroots level of council. I guess for me personally, I'm most interested in council. I have no aspirations for further politics, and I do really see a councillor is playing that really important community role. And the Greens, I guess, support that. So it's really good having the support to be a candidate and a councillor. And I think it's pretty clear what our policies are as a party.
Anne McGregor, I'm a resident of Randazzo Ward. You've mentioned Merri Creek already, and obviously it's a very much loved parkland, bushland corridor, and a lot's been done to improve it, but there's a lot more scope for expanding the corridor, improving the bushland for people and for wildlife. How will you ensure that the council continues to support that bushland corridor, the maintenance and the expansion?
And you're open to ask.
Yes,
Do you want to go first?
I think that Merri Creek is it's very beautiful, and obviously it's a terrific bike path, and a lot of people use it for walking. A lot of people don't know that it actually used to be a dump. So all of the businesses and industries that came along Merri Creek used to just dump all of their refuse over the back. This is decades ago, but there's a huge campaign to clean it up, and I think it's been extremely successful. And a lot of native trees have been planted, which is terrific. I think this can be extended. There are a lot of unused industrial areas at back onto Merri Creek that can be repurposed for parkland, and this is something that Liz actually mentioned, that a lot of the runoffs from flood waters come into Merri Creek and take a lot of rubbish with it. This can be rearranged with a lot of rubbish traps and fences to prevent, whenever it floods, you can see it's just like a high watermark of rubbish and plastic. There are ways of dealing with this. A little bit of investment needs to go into it, but yeah, Merri Creek has certainly become a lot more beautiful than it is, and especially after heavy rainfalls. And I'm sure that Liz agrees with this as well, but yeah, the investment needs to be made.
Yeah, definitely. It's such a precious community asset. I mean, just for us as humans, and also for nature, and for sort of overcooling and things like that too. I really think, for me, something that just blows my mind is that the water, streams and things in our cities can be allowed to get to that stage, that I guess industries can still, emit water into it, things like spills, pollution, sort of fairly freely enter our waterways, and it's a real shame. I'd certainly like to investigate how kind of planning controls and that sort of thing can be strengthened to prevent the impact of industrial land. And yes, things like preventing litter and pollutions from entering our stormwater system to begin with is really important. And I love the idea of the biodiversity. For instance, Merri Creek Catchment Authority just received a lot of funding to create a biodiversity corridor along the creek, and certainly, however council can support those sorts of efforts, I think will be really important, and they do amazing work.
Yeah, I have a question. Merri-bek Council is the only council that I know of in Victoria that has the 5-star system, which enables developers to bypass objections. The Brunswick Council supported this. How do you see that as a better process than what every other council uses?
I think that was something that was brought up in the previous session. Adam explained that was, I guess, something that was in the previous term of council, and it's now being wound back, so it's no longer the case.
It's going to be wound back.
I think it already has been.
Well, I think anything that I say is people will already know my response, which is that we absolutely object to any removal of the democratic right of the local residents in order to object to development. So that's all I have to say.
Jay, who is actually another candidate from are you from
Lygon? But actually I think my question has already been answered in context, so no further questions, Your Honour.
Okay. So we've got just under 15, but probably about 8 minutes for a couple of quick questions, and then go to their closing statements, and then we can have a cup of tea. So we might finish a few minutes early. So you want to have a second question?
Yeah, and a completely different topic. So in regards to the water catchment and rubbish
Yeah, I guess, do you mean like council areas?
No, I mean all.
Or the northern part of Merri-bek?
So the northern part of Merribek was a lot of proposed development, which I'd like you to answer this first, please, because it's about what goes into the runoffs and the toilets and everything that ends up in the waterways, which is polluted.
I do think that is a very good point because there is a bit of a divide within Merribek between the northern suburbs and the southern ones, and the fact that we have, you know, the flow comes from the north to the south, or the stream tributaries, or they, you know, you get runoff from the northern suburbs, and a lot of that is from industrial areas, and it comes through the creeks and waterways in the south. This is actually something that Sue altered at the back here knows a lot about, because her ward is over Ginland, which is right up to the Falkland area, and it is in a lot of this, in, you know, these industrial suburbs. And there is a constant fight to make sure that businesses in the industry doesn't just dump their waste wherever it is, and it can easily get picked up from the surface and then taken into Merri Creek or into Green Creek on the other side.
It's also development.
Yeah. So there is a lot of building work, and construction work does entail a lot of you know, wastewater from gravel and, you know, truss rock and things like that. And you know, it's also a big problem further north on the ring road, like Campbellfield. We've had huge fires there, and all the chemicals released from those fires absolutely get released into the waterways, no matter what the EPA says. And it's something that the developers, both the industrial and residential developers, feel they can get away with because they think that no one's watching. So a big part of the campaign that Sue organises in the north is to identify where there are the worst offenders and get the community together to fight against it, because really, if the community itself doesn't make a big fuss about these things, it's not something that some local council bureaucrat or, you know, worker that's stressing about other things is going to take much time.
Okay, so we have like one quick question from Andrew and from this gentleman. Like, can you think just a really quick question and give them one out? Andrew? Go.
Second question. I'm a Randazzo resident. From a quick glance at the map, it appears that Randazzo has the least amount of open space of any ward. Is that true? Will you commit? I have a little park that I'm trying to get up for without much success. How can we ensure that open space deprived for Randazzo gets a bit more of the pie and really help facilitate that?
Yes, certainly. I haven't seen, I guess, with the Park Close to Home project, there was a lot of mapping done of spaces that, areas that do lack open space. It is something I've noticed, you know, I guess going around this area, that there might be a few small little pockets of parks, but no sort of floating park or those big park equivalents. I do think it's really important to have that, but certainly, love to help facilitate that sort of thing. I think that one thing we could look at is kind of creating pocket parks on our streets that would also act as sort of traffic calming and reducing traffic volumes. I'm sure that'd be something that you'd be interested in as well.
Thanks. I've got to tell you that I spent probably dozens, maybe nearly half of 50 or so hours poring over maps of Merri-bek, because I've been doing all of the letterboxing and door-knocking maps for this election and other ones as well. So I can guarantee you that Randazzo ward does have at least green space. It's quite obvious from the Google Maps. And I promise you, Andrea, that I'll help to fight for this park, this small park of yours. I'll make sure that it's a priority in council. We need it. We need more green space, and I'll fight that any resident that wants to create green space somewhere in the ward and in Merribek more broadly.
Right, I'm super, because I've been
resources to keep going. They need resources.
Sure.
Councils.
Everyone needs resources.
Any comment on that, Christine?
Okay, so you might move to 2-minute wrap up for each of the candidates, and then we'll go and continue back, and then we'll talk again. So before we go to the wrap up, I think I'll just run through things really fast. Obviously, the Scouts have given us this for free tonight, but we want to take actions with people and give it to them. The bucket's there, Nancy says, if you've got any coins or any notes, throw them in. Thanks to John and Watt for filming this, and we'll be putting it on the BRM Facebook. Thanks to all the supporters who helped us with the publicity for tonight and coming along and for turning out. And don't forget to vote. So ballots start Tuesday, 7th of October. It must be in by 6 o'clock on the 25th, and results will be declared no later than Friday, the 15th of November.
7th is a Monday.
Sorry?
7th is a Monday.
That's what they get made about.
Oh, they're going to start posting them on Monday. Yeah. Okay. So, we'll just go to 2 minutes each. If you're going to, you might time to go on the street.
Yes, it will.
Thanks so much, everyone, for coming tonight, and thank you for the Brunswick Residents Network for organising this. I think it's such an important part, I wish this would have happened more, because I think it's really important for you to have a chance to hear from us, and also for us to have a chance to hear from you. I really enjoyed your questions tonight. Around 4 years ago, I was living in the UK with the intention of moving back to Melbourne and really trying to decide where exactly to move. And for so many reasons, Brunswick East was really just such an attractive place for me to decide to make my new home. And I'm so glad I did. I just love the community here. I just love there's so many amenities and just have really amazing, vibrant shopping streets and everything. I really I love this neighbourhood so much. And I really see so much potential as well. I think people in this area really want more from both their community and their council, and I would really love to be in a position to help make that happen. So yes, thank you all for coming, and I hope to get your support on the ballot paper.
Thanks. I also loved living in both area, and with my little, she's a toddler now, but she's called Gretel, and she's just getting to explore the area. I took 9 months of parental leave just after she was born, and we jumped on the cargo bike every single day, rode around. I took her swimming lessons at the Brunswick pool. We used the Merri-bek toy library. We've gone to every single park in all of the Brunswicks. I guarantee it, been on every swing. So I have a vested interest in wanting the best amenities and the best services. I think it's actually amazing, especially the maternal child health system has been spectacular, and all of the help that my partner got with feeding has just made a giant difference to me. And it really has taught me that there is a community spirit that still exists. I was quite cynical before that this had been stripped away by neoliberalism, but there is a little pocket of it that remains, and we have to nurture this. And I think that by fighting for the continuation of people coming together to help each other within the local community, that we can really keep this going and expand it. I've learned a lot over my years as an activist. I've been an activist. I actually joined Socialist over 20 years ago, where I fell asleep. I've been highly active since I came back to Melbourne 7 years ago. I've joined so many campaigns, and it really gets me going to get together with a group of dedicated people who are giving up their free time in order to fight for something that they care about for their communities. And probably 80% of the time we don't win. But that 20% of the time when we do win, it makes everything worthwhile. So I really want to take that right to council, as a councillor. I want to continue the work that Sue Bolton does, that Monica Hart does, to stand up for the community, to just bring people together and organising. Like, I do a lot of organising work, but organising the community is really what I love.